Well, it's hard to do because whiskey is, a lot of the really high-end whiskeys and the rarer whiskeys are under allocation. And what that means to the layman is you can't just order it. You can't open a bar or as a bar decide, okay, I'm going to order this. It was a little bit easier 4 or 5 years ago when we started that. It's much more difficult now to go into business and develop the kind of collection we have or the kind of collection Bourbon House has or some of the other really well-established great bars in the city like the Sazerac Bar and the Roosevelt Hotel. Allocations are based on reputation. They're also based on volume. They're based on where the distillers and the distributors want to place those products. So when a company like Four Roses, who is as good or better as anybody in the business, sends their Whiskey of the Year award-winning small batch, and they only send 3 to 4, 6 bottle cases to the entire market, who gets that? And that's what allocation means. But I work really hard to get more. And that's through relationships with the distilleries, that's through relationships with your distributors. It's making sure that you have the volume on their base product that they're looking for to support that allocation. It's hard work. So anybody in the city who has done that and who's accomplished that has really accomplished something. What we go for in our bourbon collection, which is not necessarily going to be the same as every other bourbon bar's goals. What we go for is a range of price ranges, a range of rarity, and a lot of options for people out there who are not, you want to have the options for the total whiskey geek, the things they're not going to see on other menus. And then you want to have the options for the brand new drinker who just wants to try a lot of different things, but needs that price range to be a more reasonable price range. And then on top of that, you have to have staff education, because a new bourbon drinker is going to come in and find my list or any other serious list in the city very intimidating. So your staff has to be able to guide customers and let them know what they should consider selecting next.
Kind of selection?
Well, 2 things about bourbon and beer. First of all, I lived in Kentucky for a long time, so I developed a deep love of bourbon while I lived there. And even while we were working on the beer portfolio here, we started bringing in interesting things in the bourbon line. But we wanted to devote an enormous amount of attention to beer and do that well before we launched into anything else. And, you know, one step at a time. So when we went into the bourbon field, we already had a nice selection, but I think doing the beer ahead of time gave us a little bit of gravitas with some of the distributors. They saw what we did with beer, and they were a little bit probably more generous with us in terms of allocations because they saw what the potential was. Anytime you talk about bourbon in this city, you have to talk about Bourbon House and the Sazerac Bar and the Roosevelt Hotel. Those are exceptional places, and those are both places that I would choose to drink any day of the week. They blaze the trail, they continue to do an excellent job. While it's exciting as a neophyte to the whiskey realm to get the attention in NOLA.com, I think a lot of that attention comes also because we're just a casual drinking place and you don't feel like it's a destination as much. So we might end up touching a lot more of your casual drinkers. But Bourbon House and Sazerac are 2 of my favorite places in the city.